Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the first NTC podcast of 2024. I'm Aaron Washington, your host. Avi Tyagi is with me for the second time in NTC history. So glad to have him back. This podcast is brought to you by Sports Business Classroom, as always. But glad you guys have decided to join us for another year. 2023 was awesome for us. We had a lot of great guests, a lot of great accomplishments last year. But obviously, we're trying to go a step forward, kind of bring this thing just do some more great things in 2024. Go to places we've never been before. Get some new great guests in here, new content, new ideas. So we're going to be all over the map this year, but we really believe you guys are going to enjoy what's in store for NTC. We have some big plans coming up for the next 12 or so months. But specifically for this installment, Avi and I are going to discuss this crop of rookies for the 2023 draft, with the exception of one that was in the 2022 draft, and we're going to cover him a little bit later on. But Avi, hope you enjoyed your holidays, man. Happy New Year to you. Glad to be back on another pod with you. It's been kind of crazy the past couple of weeks. I was traveling. I was under the weather. I was trying to just get it back on the comeback trail and get back on with you, man. But glad we're able to make this happen and get us some more great content.
Happy to be here. Love all the words you said. I hope 2024 is the year we take another step forward. I went to the Warriors-Nuggets game 2 days ago, which is quite a game. I'll put it that way.
I bet.
Yeah, it was something.
I don't know what it is about the Nuggets, man. Like, I always find myself watching them. You watched them
really
recently.
Good.
Yeah. I went to a game myself.
Jokic is good.
He's really good, man. I mean, to put it plainly, that's like almost disrespecting him to say he's good.
It really is, yeah.
But I went to a game myself not too long ago. Nuggets in Denver versus the Thunder, Shea 40-piece. He does it in his sleep at this point. What else can you say?
I'm jealous. That is a beautiful game.
It was. It wasn't really the closest game, thanks to Shea and the Thunder making their mark. But, it's how it goes sometimes. The Nuggets are they're dealing with some problems right now as far as their depth goes. So
yeah,
part of the game. But Avi, what do you say we get into some rookie talk here? We're going to dedicate this week to rookies only. Next week, we're going to look at some sophomores. So that's going to be most of the 2022 draft class. We're going to get into next week. But for now, we're going to focus on rooks, first-year players. We're going to look at some standout guys. Avi and I are going to give some of our all-rookie team picks at the end of this podcast. So if you guys are only interested in that, go ahead and fast forward if you want to see that. But if you want to see the in-depth talk on all of the rookies here, or most of the rookies that have stood out in one way or another, stay tuned. Should be good stuff. But let's get into, obviously, the big name rookie from this class. The number one overall picked by the San Antonio Spurs, Victor Wembanyama, is stealing headlines right now. He was stealing headlines from the moment he made his first appearance in the NBA earlier this season, but especially now because he just had a duel of the ages versus the Greek freak Giannis the other night. Avi, were you able to catch that game by chance?
No, I actually was not able to catch that game, specifically because I went to the Warriors-Nuggets game.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. I'll give you a pass for that one.
Yeah. But I saw the highlights of it, like while I was at the stadium, I was trying to catch highlights of it, and it was just remarkable. I mean, you really feel like you're watching Goliath versus Goliath.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. I mean, I don't know what else to say about him other than he's an alien. He surpassed Unicorn. Yeah. I think there's so many talented big men today with Towns and Porzingis and all these other guys. Like, Unicorn doesn't really do it justice anymore in terms of his skill set. So we have to find a new term. LeBron, some other guys have used the term alien. I think that's fair because his dimensions, the way he plays the game with his dimensions, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So trying to break down a little bit of what he's done so far here, just a little bit by the numbers. If we look at his stats, Avi, compared to only rookies, he's first in points per game, 19.2. First in rebounds, 10.1. First in rookie and league blocks per game. NBA blocks per game, number one, 3.2 per game. Best shot blocker in the league as a rookie. You don't see that every day. That really is something.
That's just ridiculous.
It is, man. He's first in league stocks, So stocks, for anybody that's uneducated, stocks plus block or steals plus blocks equals stocks. He has 132 stocks on the season through just over 30 games played. So that's pretty crazy. Number one in the league. Uh, there's somebody else. We'll talk about him later after this. That is also top 5 in stocks. You guys should be able to guess who that is. So those are the great numbers here so far for Wemby. The raw numbers are incredible. Here is where it's a little bit kind of iffy right now for him. It's the efficiency.
Yes.
So if we dive into his percentages, 2-point percentage is 52. That seems pretty good. But if we look in the context of only big men, he's in the 18th percentile. So that's not great. 3-point percentage, 29%. He's only in the 29th percentile amongst big men. Free throw percentage is a little bit better, 78.6. So he's in the 64th percentile, a little bit above average. So he's a pretty solid free throw shooter. And, Avi, when it comes to his shooting percentages, I think that he'll be fine in the long run. The team situation is not ideal. He's playing with some guards that are just not great about getting him the ball in the correct spots. He's having to jack up a lot of tough shots, which he shouldn't have to as a big man. And a lot of the easy shots he would get on another team, his teammates missed him a lot of times on this team. So I wanted to point that out as well. Of course, there's his length, there's his shot blocking ability. There's so many things we can talk about. But what comes to mind for you first when you think of Wembanyama and what he brings to the table as a rookie?
The first thing that comes to mind, watching him and watching the next guy we're going to talk about, is just the defense. The amount of space he can cover in such a short period of time to just swat shots out of nowhere. I remember watching Mobley 2 seasons ago and thinking, oh my God, this is like the pinnacle of what rookie center defense looks like. And now we get Chet and Wemby coming in at the same time. And it just feels like a whole nother level. And that's nothing to take away from Mobley. Like, Mobley is excellent. But watching what Wemby and Chet can do at the rim already, while also being able to play multiple types of coverages to be able to shut down opponents, is just, it's something else. Offensively, when I watch him, a lot of the times I feel like he's being overtaxed offensively with really difficult shots. As you said, he's not typically surrounded by lineups where they have guards or forwards who are particularly adept at passing him the ball in advantageous positions. And when he's asked to create, the difference between him and Chet right now, who we'll get to later, I don't want to go too far into him yet, but there are still times where I feel like, okay, this is still a rookie who hasn't been in the league for a year the way Chet has, and I feel like you can feel it with his youthful inexperience and his scrawniness. Plus, his clog spacing is just terrible. Like the whole Sohan experiment,
abysmal.
Ooh, that was really rough to watch, and it made it really difficult for him. There's too many of these difficult turnaround shots, too many of having your center have to create. He's shooting 31.5% right now outside the restricted area. That is not good. It's really not good. Long term, I still have faith in his shot developing because of the free throw percentage and just because of how his shot looks. But right now, those are kind of all the issues leading to why his percentages are so low.
You said it, Avi. That's really what it comes down to. If you're on a team that has guards that are not very great about getting you the ball in the proper spots, on the roll, they miss him. There are some times to where, how can you miss a guy like that? If he has his arm straight up, he has an 8-foot reach pretty much, and you miss him, it's really discouraging sometimes as a fan. So I can only imagine how he feels. But there's some opportunities to where, like, hey, this is going to be easy basket, and it goes from an easy basket to a shot he can make, but the percentages, like you said, are just going to be that much lower because he has to manufacture shots for himself. And I do want to give him credit for being a plus ball handler at his size. Yes. What he's able to do as well with the ball in his hands is nothing short of spectacular. That was on display during that Bucks game. There was a fast break. Damian Lillard was in front of him. Granted, it was only Lillard, but he had the ball in his left hand. He brought it around his back to his right hand, kept his footwork pristine, didn't travel, went off his right foot and dunked it on, I think it was Brook Lopez was coming back for the chase down block. So plays like that, the around the backs, the through the legs, he's very fluid with those ball movements. and it shouldn't be possible for a guy of his size, but he makes it happen, and that gives him even more of a runway to getting great shots. Now, there's limitations to that. He's obviously not going to be able to cross over much smaller players that are pretty quick and can stay in front of him. But for guys of his size, similar size, there's so much he can do with the ball to be able to get downhill. And that kind of brings us to another point that you touched on a little bit is his frame, as you put it, the scrawniness comes into play a little bit when it comes to getting to the rim. That also influences the percentages a little bit as well when it comes to shooting inside the paint, shooting at the rim. Now he's actually a decent shooter at the rim. He's about
Yeah.
75%, which is really good. It helps him that he's 7'4", 7'5", and he can get a lot of these baskets off of dunks, some lobs in there. So that obviously gives him more of a safety net, more of a margin of error when it comes to finishing, just because of his reach and just his ability to just make things happen above the rim, get the balls that other players can't get. It gives him just so many more abilities there. But the ball handling is incredible. The shot blocking. Avi, do you think he should be considered for an all defensive team as a rookie right now because of his work at the rim and other parts of the floor?
Considered? Oh yeah, definitely. I would definitely consider him. I mean, there's a lot of good centers this year, but I would definitely put him heavily into consideration. And it's still early, so
It
we'll
is.
see. But I think he has a real case to be on one of the two teams.
Me too. I mean, if you lead the league in blocks, obviously blocks turn everything,
Yeah,
but you lead the league in blocks. He's an A+ rim protector, and he's not bad in space, which is crazy to say as a over
I
7 foot
know.
player. Like that's just wild. But he can hold his own. He's not going to get blown by every single time on the perimeter. Sometimes he will, but he can move his feet pretty well. The crazy long arms are incredible. Now, the one thing that's also putting a damper on his game right now is the minutes per game. He suffered a couple of ankle injuries back to back. So the Spurs made the decision to limit his minutes to about 24 a game. There's a little bit of flexibility there for a couple more minutes. I think he played a little bit more in the Bucks game, which I'm glad he did, just because it was a chance for them to win a game, which doesn't happen very often for the Spurs. So he got a little bit more time, but the 24 minutes per game, no back to backs, is a buzzkill, I will admit. But for Wemby, he's the future. He has the potential to be one of the best players in the league, one of the best players of all time. So you want to take it easy with him. I don't fault the Spurs for doing that, but it does hurt a little bit as a fan. You want to see him play as much as possible. So there's that part of it as well. But despite all that, he's having a phenomenal rookie season. I don't think you can ask much more of him. And I think as time goes on, he fills into his body, he gets more familiar with the game. He's just going to be that much better. Like there's no limit we can put on him in his future.
In particular, I think there's two things that I think will improve quickly over time. One, his handle. It's really, really good for someone his size, but I think it can still get a little bit better. There are
Mm-hmm.
still times where I feel like he feels, I don't want to say too comfortable, but there are times where he's dribbling. And I don't think he realizes he needs to dribble even lower than he thinks he needs to because of how good NBA defenders are. So
Mm-hmm.
that costs him sometimes. And the second thing, again, will just be circumstances. A lot of the times, when he is passing to teammates or teammates are passing to him, problems occur with miscommunication or just straight up dropping passes. And I think over time that'll clean up a little bit. And he has a little bit of a problem right now as well because he's so scrawny with shielding defenders away. As he gets stronger, I think he'll be able to use his offhand a little bit better, and that'll help his dribbling even more. So
Yep.
those are just some certain areas where I feel like, okay, his passing will start to get a little bit better. Okay, now he can handle even better. You can actually give him that 30% usage that he currently has, and he might actually be able to sustain it and produce effective shots. So I just think over time, we might actually see him develop into like a star stud offensive player despite being a center, which is
Yeah.
does not happen often.
No, exactly. And to kind of expand on your point about his position being a center, sometimes he is a center. Sometimes he functions as a four, which I think is another point for him just in terms of
Yeah.
his versatility. So he plays about a 50-50 split between the four and the five. I looked it up on Clean the Glass. they have him listed. I think it's like 49% at the 4, 51% at the 5. So pretty close to even. And it's interesting to see how he performs in those two positions. So when he plays at the 4, he's a little bit better as far as his defense and rebounding. Obviously, he's playing against smaller players, so those statistics for him are a little bit better. When he's at the 5, however, he's better as an offensive player. So for him, I think his advantages as far as his handling, his shooting, his ability to just be a crazy finisher with that size, they're more pronounced when he's playing against 5s than 4s. So it's interesting to see that contrast. So for him, it's definitely going to even out, I think, as time goes on. And I'm interested to see where he kind of settles as a player in his prime. Is he going to be more of a 4? Is he going to be a 5? Does he bulk up enough to where he can play the majority of his minutes at the 5? That's something I'm interested to see. But I think in any case, just the fact that he's able to play both positions right now, there is part of it is because of the roster construction. Sometimes he really just needs to play the 5, but that's something else I want to keep an eye on because it is interesting. He can really be one or the other. It's just based on, I think, how the roster is constructed and his development curve as far as how he grows as a player, mentally and physically.
I think he'll be a long-term 5, but I definitely want to monitor it because, again, some of that will be circumstance. Right now, the way they play, they kind of need him to play 4 sometimes because they'll play Zach Collins with him. But I
Right.
think over time, he will settle into being a full-time 5.
Yep.
But we'll see.
I can see that. I would agree with that for sure. So, I mean, obviously, Wemby is making headlines. He's doing some incredible things as a rookie. But there is a player that is playing pretty much just as well, if not better than Wemby at this point in time. And that's going to be Chet Holmgren for the OKC Thunder. The Chet Holmgren, like I mentioned before, was drafted in 2022. So he is a rookie, but he's a little bit older than Wemby. He's about a year older. He's 21 at this point. Chet, for being a first-year player, looks incredible by every stretch of the imagination. Another player comes in as this wildly long, very well coordinated player at 7 feet tall. Just a crazy ability to make things happen on both ends of the floor. Just about as impressive as Wemby on defense. I think he's been a lot more impressive on offense to this point. But just looking at some of his numbers, second in rookie points at 17.4, third in rebounds, 7.4. Now he's second in rookie blocks per game. So amongst all rookies, he's second. He is fifth in league blocks per game. So along with Wemby, he's top 5 in blocks per game for the NBA. Very impressive. He is fourth in stocks. There's that word again. So
Yep.
if we talk about blocks and steals, 111 through this point of the season. He's fourth in the league. So that's very impressive as well. Now, here's where he differentiates himself from Wemby a little bit. If we talk about efficiency, worlds better. And we'll talk about why here in a second. But his 2-point percentage is 62. That's 67th percentile. His 3-point percentage is 40%, 81st percentile. So he is an excellent shooter already out the gate. Free throw percentage. And again, this is another great determiner of 3-point percentage, overall shooting ability. 83.2%, 81st percentile. So he's already above average shooter from basically every area of the floor, from 2, from 3, from free throw percentage, is all looking very good. So he has a lot of those same strengths as Wemby, great handle for his size, a great shooting form. So for him, it's actually playing out right now. For Wemby, it's more of like, we believe he can do it. For Chet, it's happening. Great ability to get into the paint, finish lobs, be a great rebounder. Even though he's slight frame, he makes all these things happen. And that's before we even talk about his defense. And his defense is incredible as well. But I wanted to highlight that part of his game first because I think that's what separates him from Wemby right now. And I just wanted to make that clear because for me, that's what gives him the edge in the rookie of the year conversation. Some people still will put Wemby first, very fair. But I think because of what Chet is doing on both ends of the floor, being efficient, being a great rim protector, all of the things might put him a little bit farther ahead. But how do you feel about Chet's case right now?
I'm glad we started with Wemby because I just want to read the last line of the notes that I made for myself. I said about Wemby, he's been fantastic and he's been the best prospect in the 2023 draft class because his defense has instantly translated. But rookie of the year is gone
Mm,
because that's how I feel about Chet. I watching Chet, I haven't done my thorough deep dive yet into All Star, but based off of preliminarily watching a bunch of the candidates, not only do I feel like Chet should be the rookie of the year, I have him as an All Star. And
mm,
I can't remember the last time that I've felt that way about a rookie. Even Doncic, who I thought was incredible as a rookie, I didn't have him as an all star.
wow.
So, I mean, this is one of the greatest age 21 seasons of all time. I started looking back through the archives just basically from a data perspective of, okay, defensively, who is contributing the most? Offensively, maybe you adjust for, okay, he is more efficient than a lot of players, but you have to adjust in past eras for, the more clogged spacing, the fact that shooting was less of a priority, the usage rate. Even accounting for all that, I would argue this is one of the 8 best age 21 seasons of all time. And the list for me would be Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Shaq, LeBron, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Luka Doncic, Chet. That's
Mm,
how I feel about Chet. Watching him, this is where the gap started to emerge for me watching him versus watching Wemby. I know he has a smaller role and he plays in better circumstances because he has Shea and Jalen Williams, excellent coaching staff. Everyone can kind of shoot. But just watching him individually, his handle, it feels so much better than it even did at Gonzaga 2 years ago. When I'm
mhm.
watching him dribble, he can actually get his arms incredibly low to the point where it looks like he's dribbling from the same point that a wing does. Only he's a 7'2" center. His crossovers, quick and fluid. His decision making, fast. His shot, instantly translated. His defense, I don't need to say much else. You've already said so much about his blocks and his stocks. But it's even better than those raw numbers indicate. When you
Mm,
watch him, he can cover up all the space. He can cover up all the problems on the court defensively, and it's the Thunder, so it's not like they have that many concerns anyways. There were
right.
concerns. Oh, you see his frame; he's so small and scrawny. He's a dog, man. He
He
does
really
not play
is.
like that size. He plays like a man much sturdier than he actually is. I I don't think I've done rookie write ups the last 2 years as well. People can go read those if they want. I don't think I've enjoyed watching a rookie as much as I've enjoyed watching Chet.
Looking at the way he plays the game, and then not just him in a vacuum, but how he plays the game within the Thunder system. I
Yep.
think all of his teammates amplify his strengths incredibly well. Working with a guy like Shea, I mean, he has advantages over Wemby. I don't want to, discredit that part of the conversation. But even despite those advantages, he's playing incredible. And Avi, you brought up some legendary names in the
Yes.
comparison between Chet, all these guys talking about rookie seasons, age 21 seasons, and you are on point with those comparisons. I actually went to the Ringer. I read this when it came out. I want to say it was 3 or 4 days ago now.
Oh,
But
okay.
Zach Cram at the Ringer did an article. He has his weekly updates where he talks about the biggest stories in the league, things that stood out to him. Every Wednesday, I encourage everybody to check that out on the Ringer. But one of his main segments was Chet's historic rookie season. I want to read two
Oh,
quotes
wow.
from his
Okay.
article that will describe what you're talking about, Avi. There's going to be some names you just mentioned here. So Holmgren has the fourth best box plus minus among all rookies in the past half century. So fourth behind only Arvydas Sabonis, which, shout out to Arvydas Sabonis. As a very old rookie, he came
Yes.
in, he was spectacular. Wish he was here earlier. That would have been cool.
Yeah, it would have.
Uh, David Robinson and Michael Jordan. There's that name again.
Yep.
So fourth best box plus minus 50 years. So that's the first quote. Second quote, uh, Holmgren is averaging 17.6 points, 7.6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 2.7 blocks. Only 12 rookies since 73-74 have averaged at least 17 points and 2 blocks per game. 9 Hall of Famers plus Holmgren plus Wemby plus Joel Embiid. I mean, there
Oh
you
my
go.
God.
There you go. I mean, when we look at what Chet is doing, we have to narrow the field all the way down to Hall of Famers. That's how incredible he's been so far. So I think if you're on the same tier as some of the greatest players to ever play in age 21 at your age 21 season, I mean, hey, what better case is there to be rookie of the year? What better case is there to be an all-star? Because I mean, we're talking about advanced stats, we're talking about box scores, we're talking about efficiency marks, we're talking about the eye test. You know, you just mentioned some of those things he's improved upon since he entered the league from Gonzaga. But I mean, all of these facts together, you pull it all together. I mean, just incredibly polished, effective. He battles against the best big man. He does have some limitations physically. I watched him battle against Jokic in Denver. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously he had no chance. I mean, Jokic
I mean,
just
that's Jokic.
like a little kid. Yeah, but I mean, he does that to everybody, so that's not necessarily a knock on him. But I mean, he's doing so many things so well. So I just wanted to highlight that because it reinforces the points you brought up about Chet's ability to influence the game from a historic level. So that's how well he's playing so far. And I'm just so excited for the Thunder and his game individually because there's no telling where they can go. And the Thunder are in the elite of the elite because of how fast Chet has adapted to the NBA.
Exactly. I wrote about the Thunder last year, right? And last year when I was writing about the Thunder, I was really excited about them. I thought 2025 might be the year. Okay, finally they're starting to make themselves championship contenders. Watching Chet just plug himself into the system, and it's like night and day. Last year when I'm watching the Thunder, I feel like I'm watching them have to cover up for the fact that they don't have a real center. So they're throwing all these smoke and mirrors defensive concepts, just swiping at the ball, being a chaos defense with the hopes that nobody makes it to the paint because they don't have anybody there who can block shots.
Right.
Now we have Chet. Okay, great. Yeah, okay, you beat one of us. Oh, I guess Jalen Williams got beat this one time. Whatever. Oh, look who's there. Oh, it's Chet. He's just gonna block your shot, and then he'll go back in transition. He'll be the trailer three-point shooter. Everyone on that team screens for each other. There will be possessions where he's screening for Isaiah Joe, and then Isaiah Joe is screening for him. As a passer, already he knows exactly where to go with the ball. He's a great extra passer. He's incisive at times when asked to be. Um, as a passer looking for cutters to the hoop, he does everything well right now. And again, I said right now, I think he might be an all-star. Here's the list of players who I think he might be an all-star over right now. Desmond Bain, Jamal Murray, Paul George, James Harden, Zion Williamson, Sabonis, Kyrie Irving, Wemby, Ingram, and CJ McCollum. Like, this is a really, really strong year for the All-Star campaign. We'll get to that later. But especially in the West, that's like a future episode.
Yep.
Everyone is healthy for the first time in years. There are very few players this year who are injured who would typically be an all-star consideration. Mm-hmm. And despite that, I'm saying right now, I think he's an all-star. And I can't explain how crazy that is. Just go watch the Thunder, people. Wow. Just do yourself a service. Go watch them play.
Just do it. Listen to the man. Do what he says. Do yourself a favor. Check out one of the best rookies in modern history. That is Chet Holmgren in a nutshell, what he's doing for the Thunder. One more quick point before we move on.
Yep.
Chet's defensive ability is crazy on this team. It's like it's bolstering what was already a good defense. So he didn't have to come in here and transform a defense that was absolutely awful, that was 20th or 25th or something like that. Despite the problems at the rim you just mentioned, not having a true rim protector, having Jalen Williams play a lot of the five for them last year, they were still a above average defense. Yes. I want to say they finished 12th or 13th in defensive rating last year. Let me a quick second to actually check on that. 14th last year, according to Basketball Reference. So just above average. This year, they're 7th in defensive rating. So we're talking about a top 10 team on defense, thanks to the exploits of Chet, along with a number 5 offensive rating. So if we look at their net rating, which is third, their offense and their defense, the Thunder, due in part to Chet's incredible rise, quick rise, they are in the, based on the numbers, a title contender. If you're top 10 in both, most of the time you're an elite team and you're in the hunt. Now, I mean, we can have a conversation later about whether they really are contenders, but they should at least be in the conversation just because your marks are so good. And Chet is a big part of that. So just wanted to highlight that real quick. But we're going to move on here to the next crop of rookies here. Unfortunately, these guys aren't historic rookies. You know, they're not going to be in the same sentence as Michael Jordan or David Robinson, but they still are worth highlighting because they've had great rookie seasons so far. Now, the first name I'm going to bring up here is Scoot Henderson. If you look at his box score numbers, efficiency marks, does not tell the whole story of his season so far. Looks very poor, actually. He is fifth in rookie points at 12.4, first in rookie assist at 5.1. So he is leading all rookies in assists. That's a good mark for him. But he's only a 40% 2-point shooter, fifth percentile, 28.7% from three, 14th percentile. And he's even only in the 30th percentile as far as a free throw shooter, 76.9. So when you look at all these percentages here, not a great mark for Scoot. Doesn't paint a pretty picture for him. However, if we do a little bit of a split between the first 10 games he played and then the last 14 games he's played, there is some improvement there. Now, he played 10 games. He averaged 9 points per game, and he shot 34, 22, 68 splits. Very poor. Very poor. He missed 9 games due to injury, so he was inactive for many games after that. So I want to highlight that as well. Since he's been back, so it's been about 14 games or so, he has averaged 14 points per game. So it's more of a mark of a top 5 rookie. If you look at Brandon Miller and Chet and guys like that, he's up towards those guys now. His splits have improved to 37, 34, 80. So the field goal percentage and the 3-point percentage are still poor. However, the free throw percentage is showing improvement. He's getting more points per game. He's getting more minutes as a result of some injuries. Shaedon Sharpe missed a decent amount of games. But with the more opportunities, he's become more efficient. And I think that's a good sign of a guy that's growing and learning the game. So, I wanted to point that out because he is a willing passer. He is averaging over 5 assists a game as a rookie and not the most minutes, so that's pretty solid. And he's showing improvement. No matter how badly you start a career, as long as you show that you're getting better, that's encouraging to me. So he's learning the game. He's making better decisions. He's turning the ball over less. And I think those are all marks of a player that is not necessarily on track to be a bust or just doomed during his career. He still has a great future ahead of him. It's just tricky. When you come in as a point guard, it's probably the most difficult position to learn in the NBA. It takes the most time, honestly. There's so much you have to do as a lead guard. So wanted to highlight that real quick and just mention that, hey, he's not a lost cause. He's not on track to be a bust necessarily. It just took him a little bit more time to adjust to the speed of the game, his responsibilities as a point guard, and just find his way on a team that's starting over. There's a lot that Blazers are trying to figure out right now. So just a few points about Scoot I wanted to throw out there before people start running him over and dismissing his whole career.
Yeah, I don't want to dismiss his whole career either, but again, I don't want to keep taking it back to Chet, but I just wanted to make one point here. Chet is coming off of a foot injury, right? He missed the whole of last season. And yet when I watch him now versus when I remember watching him at Gonzaga, he feels noticeably quicker. He seems to be someone who's doing better with the fact that there's more spacing around him. And he feels like someone whose handle has improved a little bit. And when I watch Scoot, and I've been trying to watch him as much as I can over the last 2 years with the G League Ignite. Watching him so far this year has been really, really tough. He has been getting better over the last 10, 15 games, primarily because he is being able to drive better to the hoop because he has a better understanding of NBA speed. But overall, I think there is still a reason why his plus minus, his advanced stats, everything looks so dire. It's because in certain aspects, there is still a lot of concerning aspects. I'm not ready to give up on Scoot, and the main reason why is actually the fact that he is coming from the G League Ignite. I think the G League Ignite program right now, there has to be some questions asked about how it prepares prospects for the NBA. When it was just Jalen Green and Kuminga, and yeah, they had some struggles coming in. Defensively, it looked a little whack. Offensively, there were some questions. It was okay. They were raw as prospects anyways. I kind of understand. With Scoot too, it really does feel like he is someone who, with the G League Ignite, was already accustomed to having spacing and was accustomed to his physical gifts, giving him more of an advantage than they do at the NBA level. When
Hmm.
I'm watching him with the Trailblazers, he feels small despite having a very well built body. And he feels like uncomfortable being able to get to his spots most of the time. And the fact that his jump shot, which was already the biggest question mark of his game, isn't letting him create easily from beyond the arc or even from the mid range very easily. That's kind of where my concerns are.
Hmm.
Defensively, I feel like all rookie point guards struggle. Offensively, there will be more turnovers because that's just how point guards tend to be.
Sure.
But the overall package, I still see the reasons why people should be concerned. And at the same time, I also see why people should give him a bit more leeway and be understanding of the fact that he is someone adjusting to the NBA in a way that most prospects aren't used to.
Hmm. I'm glad you played a little bit of devil's advocate on that piece, Avi, because I think the concerns, to a point, to an extent, are warranted. When you look at a player that played not 1 but 2 years in G League Ignite against some very formidable competition,
Yes.
it does raise some questions. And I think to an extent, you're expected to come in a little bit more polished, a little bit more refined. You've played against NBA level players before. You've been on the big stage before. So you're expected to come in and kind of know a little bit more about what you're doing. You're training with these NBA caliber players, NBA caliber coaches, these programs they're put through. So I understand that there are expectations that are pretty high for him. And, I was one of those people. I thought he was going to come in and not to say he was going to be a incredible rookie and set these records, but I thought he was going to come in and be average efficiency, be able to not be overwhelmed by the speed of the game or the strength of the game. And, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I mean, there's low light reels created of Scoot, unfortunately, some bad turnovers, some bad misses. It's just not stuff you want to see from a player that, hey, has the body. He's been in this program for 2 years. It is a little bit troubling. So I think for him, it's still more wait and see because he's so young and because it's so early
Yep.
in the season, even. But there are some yellow flags I think that are worth pointing out. Not necessarily red flags yet, but some yellow flags. But it's obvious that his adjustment is going to take more time. And luckily for him, he's in a system, an organization like the Blazers. They're on no type of schedule or timeline. They can afford to watch him just grow, learn through his mistakes. He has some great veteran leader ahead of him in Malcolm Brogdon that he can pick his brain and kind of understand what he needs to do better. Those are components of the Blazers I think work in his favor. He's not playing for the Warriors. They're not trying to win right now. He doesn't have to learn the game super quickly or risk losing a spot altogether. He's going to get minutes. He's going to get 20 or so minutes, regardless of how he's playing. So that's a plus for him. He still has more time to figure it out. I think we're just hoping that because of his experience, because of what he's been through before, that he does continue to improve. These marks that I pointed out in the last 14 games, still not going to cut it. He still has to be better, but at least the free throw percentage is getting better. So that gives us somewhat of an indicator that, okay, he can at least be an average shooter and space the floor decently well, which he has to do as a point guard in the NBA. That's just how it is right now.
Yeah, it's still a little rough to watch because again, I was also part of the people who had some higher expectations for him considering how he looked with the Ignite. I think watching him, I started to realize I feel like I started to appreciate John Morant's game a little bit more because I thought he could come in and have a little bit more of the impact Morant does. But the difference between watching Morant and watching Scoot is Morant's level of explosiveness feels at an even different level than Scoot's, who I think is a very explosive athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And Morant is so shifty and fluid as an athlete, where Scoot right now still feels a little bit boxy. It still
Yeah.
feels like he's getting from point A to point B and then turning right. It feels a little bit more like a bus turning versus watching like an absolute like a Ferrari, man. It's rough right now, but again, he's coming from the G League Ignite, and the tracker record we have so far suggests that G League Ignite prospects don't they take a little bit longer to develop than you might expect from prospects coming from other parts of the world or from college. I think partially because they are already so used to the spacing, so they have all the spacing advantages that NBA players tend to, and they get to go against easier on-ball defenders, so they can get away with a bit more than you even can in college. I think about Morant when he was in college playing at Murray State. He doesn't exactly have a very well spaced floor. So he's already having to adjust to the fact that, okay, the spacing is clogged and I still want to get to the rim. So he has many more reps of going against those clogged floors. For Scoot, this is the first time when he's really getting that sensation. But here, it's because of how athletic and long NBA defenders are. So I will, I'm still willing to give him much, much more time, but the yellow flags are definitely strong, even for a rookie point guard. I just have to mention that.
Yeah. That's fair. That's totally fair. So Avi, we're going to dive now into some of the standout early lottery players. So we're working our way through the draft here, and this is where it gets interesting because we have some players here that drafted pretty high, and they've been making waves for different reasons. So first, wanted to highlight Brandon Miller. As we know, him and Scoot, that was a hot debate for quite a while in terms of draft position. So the Hornets ended up with Brandon Miller, and the early returns have been solid. I've been pretty impressed by Brandon Miller. I'm not sure how much you've gotten to watch of his game, but for Brandon Miller, he strikes me as a guy that he's going to grow into a plus shot creator once he achieves the prime form of this game. Already third in points as a rookie, third in rookie points, 14.7. Above average 3-point shooter at 40%, 81% from the line. Still adjusting to finishing inside the three. He's only at about 45% from two, but I see flashes of a very potent scorer. I see him averaging at least 20 points per game in the very near future.
Wow.
A lot of flashes of shelf creation ability. So you look at his ability to just kind of manufacture shots. 12.2% of his shots are after two dribbles, and he's shooting 45% on those looks. So, pretty great mark for a guy that's, still working his way through the game, very young, but he already has that ability to, get pretty good shots up without great players like LaMelo Ball next to him, without Mark Williams able to draw attention. He's still able to kind of find his way pretty well, have pretty good efficiency. His 3-point stroke or his shooting stroke in general, I really like it. It's a really nice form. It's a little bit low. It could use a little bit more height on it just to be sure he doesn't get blocked too much, but really clean. And that stood out to me even back in Summer League. Just watching Summer League, watching his tape before he got into the league, I just saw him just growing into a nice shooter. I didn't expect him to be 40% already, but I can tell that, hey, he's going to be able to shoot from deep and not just at the 3-point line, but maybe a decent distance beyond the line. Get a shot off in the face of great defenders, be able to get a shot off contested inside the three, whatever the case may be. So he's really making waves in that point. And he's also a pretty good defender, pretty versatile. He has an average block rate for his position, 73rd percentile. So he just needs to fill out a little bit more in order to kind of hang with the bigger forwards. But between his length, his anticipation, his lateral movement, I think it's going to be a great two-way wing in the league for a while. And based off the early returns, it looks like the Hornets made a great decision picking him, getting him, not getting Scoot. It's worked out well for them so far.
And yet again, I feel like I'm playing devil's advocate a second time.
Go for it.
Again, I'm not trying to be negative on these players. You just wait until we get to some of the later sections and how much I'm just glowing and crowing about some of these players. But with Brandon Miller, I've been encouraged by what I've seen from him as a 3-point shooter. That was never in question. You watch him at Alabama, that man can shoot threes. I do think the 40% is slightly inflated by the fact that he doesn't take that many pull-up threes yet off of his own creation. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like if he was given more of that role, that 3-point percentage would probably be a little bit lower, maybe more in the 37% range, which is
Mm-hmm.
still good, but it's not like, 40% where we're thinking Clay, Duncan Robinson. That's when you start
Yeah,
getting to that level. You know what I
sure.
mean? He's a little bit lower than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing that has maybe caused me to question him the most is when I'm watching him play right now, his decision making to me is very questionable. There's a lot of times when I feel like he's dribbling without a plan, or he goes up in the air to make a pass, but he's not sure where. It feels to me like a case where he has a lot of those raw scoring point totals and stuff, but a lot of that is because of team circumstance and the fact that the Hornets don't have much depth. I think if he was playing on a different team, he'd be getting far fewer minutes the way someone like Cam Whitmore is, and he'd be asked more to focus on um, actually developing his abilities and to be able to earn a place within the rotation. Whereas right now, I feel like there's a little bit more of, hey, you have some freedom to kind of do what you want because we don't have that many options anyways, and you're our number 2 pick. So go wild a little bit. I think that shows itself a little bit in the limitations he has right now within the arc. The fact that he's scrawny and his handle for a wing, there's definitely some limitations right now. I don't feel like he's someone who can get to his spot or someone who can create that many shots for himself. When he does have the freedom or when he does sense a moment and he senses, okay, my defender's a little bit off and here are the moves I want to do, when he can predetermine his moves, I feel like he's very good. That's where you see the flashes where, oh, his 2 dribble pull up looks good, or oh, cross to the legs. He can do a bit of that, and then he goes for his pull up, and now it looks good. So the flashes look really good, but in terms of consistency, shot to shot, or the ability to hand him the ball and ask him to go create and score right now, I still have some questions. Ultimately, I think his how he turns out as a playmaker will ultimately determine whether he ends up being someone like Kelly Oubre or whether he ends up being someone who's a real two-way wing, sub all-star, maybe even all-star consideration player. Because
Yeah.
that's kind of the biggest difference between those two archetypes. Someone like Kelly Oubre is really effective as a scorer, but the reason he's available for a minimum is the fact that there are still limitations with what he can do um, as a dribbler, and there are a lot of limitations on what he can do as a passer. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be a hater, as they say. I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit. Raw scoring value doesn't always tell the whole story as a rookie.
That's true. That's true. We can't just look at that. You can't just look at points per game. You have to look at some other underlying numbers and situations that could really give us the full picture of what a player is doing. So I do agree. There's still some question marks with him. Um, just call me a sucker. I don't know. Like I was a huge fan of him going into the draft. I love his game, and I think he's going to have a great future. Not ready to say he's going to be like a perennial all star or anything like that, but I do think he has a pretty high ceiling, and I think his 2-way ability also separates him from players like Kelly Oubre. I think he'll be able to at least be a decently versatile defender and make some waves on that end of the floor. Um, continuing our way through some early lottery guys, we got to highlight the Thompson twins as well, just because of what they've done so far. The sample size isn't that big for Amin Thompson. He's hasn't had a ton of minutes for the Rockets. He's been hurt a little bit, so there's not much on his side. There's not too much there we can talk about. There's a little bit. But one thing that does tie these two players together is their shooting ability or lack thereof right now. Amin, in his limited minutes, is only about 56% from the free throw line. Uh, not much better for Zar Thompson. And yes, Zar Thompson has some phenomenal marks in the rebounding department, fourth amongst all rookies, fourth amongst rookies in blocks. About average from 2 point percentage, it's about average. Third percentile in 3-point shooting, just awful. 12th percentile in free throw shooting. So what happened with Azar specifically is his lack of spacing, his lack of offensive creation killed his minutes per game. The Pistons realized that if they wanted to start winning some games or have a chance of winning games, they had to throttle back his minutes, give Case some more space, give Ivy some more space, because no one is going to respect Azar from anywhere outside of maybe 10 feet from the basket. which is very unfortunate, but I mean, it's something they had to do. First 17 games, Azar was at 30 minutes a game. The last 17 games, 19 minutes a game. So, I mean, obvious difference there. He's still playing a good amount of minutes, but he's not starting anymore. He's not playing 30 plus. He's not closing games. And they really had to do that because of his limitations on the court. Um, with Amin Thompson, it's more of a situation just because of so many players in front of him. Jalen Green is going to play a lot of minutes. Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet are going to play the lion's share of the minutes at the guard positions. Doesn't leave a lot of room for Amin to get in there and make his mark. I am still very high on both players. I'm afraid for Azar just because if he's not able to make any kind of progress as an offensive player, where does that leave him in his ceiling? Solid player, but I mean, it leaves him well short of all-star trajectory. With Amin, I think there's still a lot that he can do. His role is limited, so we can't take too much from it. But he still has a great ability to be a floor general. I watched him about this point last year for OTE. He has some great court vision, great passing ability. I think a little bit better than his brother, actually. So I think that kind of gives him another avenue towards finding minutes and being an offensive creator. But I mean, I still like both of their games. I think they're still both crazy athletic, and that gives them so many opportunities when it comes to getting downhill, getting to the paint. So they're both having their struggles right now. There's some limitations in their games, but there's still a lot that these guys can do. They're so young and still have so much upside. It's just going to take some time as they grow into their roles and the rotations on their teams change.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is where my optimism now starts to kick in. When I'm watching the two Thompson twins, the thing that stands out to me is the fact that the lack of shooting is the one huge flaw they have. But if we push that aside for just a split second, because it is really important, but if we just push that aside for 1 second, they do almost everything well on the court right now. Those rebounding numbers, they're not a myth. Those are real.
Mm-hmm.
Asar is excellent at crashing the glass, and he's so strong and physical. He's one of the best on-ball defenders within this class. I would probably say the best.
Yep.
Watching someone like him versus even Brandon Miller on defense, because I tried to watch them a little bit back to back. Brandon Miller to me profiles as someone who maybe at some point might become like an average defender within a scheme. I might not put him on the main opposing scoring threat, but with Asar, I feel like right now you could stick him on some of the best players in the league, and he would be excellent at defense.
For sure.
The issue right now is just the shooting, and that's okay. We all knew that. We all knew their shot looked bad at OTE. We all knew that, okay, this is a work in progress, and you're drafting them from the upside. And the upside was based on the fact that, okay, at the NBA level, how will everything else look? Will the explosiveness look good? Will the passing look good? Will the defensive abilities look good? Will the motor look good? Will the rebounding look good? Everything else to me right now looks good for both of them. I agree. Obviously, they have a little bit different flavors. You know, one is like mint chocolate chip, the other is chocolate chip with fudge, right? So a man is a little bit more of the passer, a little bit more of the explosive downhill driving athlete, whereas Asar has made himself a little bit more of the wing, the rebounder, the defender. But their strengths are very strong, and if you can just fix their shooting, give them a Fred Vincent or Chip England, just help them find the guy who can make them an average three-point shooter even or an average outside shooter. I mean, these guys are excellent. They could be really, really, really versatile key components of a championship rotation for years.
For sure. No, there's no doubt about that at all. And I hope that their early returns haven't discouraged fans of them too much because there's so much more to see with them. They're so young. There's a lot of time for them to turn it around. We saw how Lonzo's shot was when he entered the league and how that progressed. So if Lonzo can turn his shot around and become even an average shooter in the league, I'm sure these guys can become serviceable and not be completely ignored from beyond 12, 15 feet from the basket. So I'm excited for both of their games, and I hope that either their Houston rotation changes in a way that Amin can get more minutes, maybe not this year, but next year going forward, or he finds a better destination that allows him to really kind of realize the potential in his game. So for them, there's still a lot more to come. I wouldn't get too worried. They're still both very good players. Avi, in the interest of time, I want to go ahead and work on move to some of the later picks in the draft. Just a couple of guys we can talk about here. If we're talking about sleepers, I mean, obviously we have to discuss Jaime Jaquez Jr. The way he's been able to make his mark on the Miami Heat as a guy that was drafted later in the draft, that I didn't know much about when he got drafted. I didn't really expect the Heat to pick him, although the fit makes perfect sense now. I was I didn't doubt the Heat because I've learned that when you doubt the Heat, that's where they just blow your mind. But I was like, okay, I don't know much about him. I need to do some research. Let me do some digging. I watched a film from him at UCLA. I looked at his intangibles, and I saw one of these to where it just kind of coincides with what the Heat want to do. Hard worker, gritty player, 4-year college player, knows the game, high basketball IQ, and all that's translated perfectly to the Heat. And this year specifically, it's been a great opportunity for him because Jimmy Butler is suffering so much from injuries, diminished play. He's going through some problems. So Jaquez comes in here. He starts for Jimmy. And what do you know? He's like if Jimmy was 70% of the player he is, you have Jaime Jaquez. That's still a really good player, especially as a rookie. So he comes in here. He's a well-rounded player. He can give you the points. He's fourth among rookies in points. He can pass the ball a little bit. He's fifth amongst rookies in assists. He can steal the ball, play some solid defense. Second amongst all rookies in steals, 1.1 a game. Hey, he's even 10th in rebounds at 3.7 a game. So he's top 10 in 4 categories. He can defend probably 3 positions pretty well on the court. He can put the ball in the bucket. He's a decent 3-point shooter. And this is really incredible stuff, even from a 4-year player. Yes, he probably doesn't have the runway or the ceiling of some of these other guys we just talked about, but you have to acknowledge the fact that he's doing so much good for a Heat team that's really needed it. I think they have at least 3 less wins this season if he's not a part of the rotation.
Yep.
So you got to give him props. You also have to give props to the Heat coaching staff for believing in him so much. There are some fourth quarters. He's played the entire fourth quarter. And for a team with this much pedigree, this much history, this much of a win now mentality, for him to play the entire fourth quarter, that says a lot about Jaime and about the Heat organization. So that's one of the things that makes them so great, in my opinion. They don't take as long as some other coaches or other organizations to get the idea. It's like if something works, I don't care if you're a rookie. Steve Kerr needs to take notes because it's like, hey, if something's working, just do it. I don't care if Klay Thompson is already in the rotation. I don't care if Wiggins is in the rotation. If this rook is playing this well, throw him in there. Whole fourth quarter, close games, whatever the case may be. So, I'll let off the gas a little bit. I'm just super excited as a Heat fan watching what Hawkins is doing so far. But, I mean, for me, he's easily number 3 behind those other 2 legendary rookies just because of what he's doing for a really good team and what he's doing in multiple facets of the game.
For me, he would be number 4, and we'll get to who number 3 is later. But
Okay.
But watching him, yeah, you really feel that the Heat are meritocracy. Some teams who are tanking or rebuilding will maybe give their rookies more time than they probably deserve off of their play, and they perhaps don't get coached the same way as rookies would on other teams. There's a little bit more freedom, too much freedom sometimes for them to make mistakes. And then there's some where you brought up the Warriors where there's a little bit more mistrustful of rookies anyways, and even if they play well, sometimes the veterans might get extra play over them anyways. The Heat, when you watch them, you feel that they're a meritocracy, and it's great with Jaime Jaquez. He cuts well. He shoots well enough. He defends well enough. He's crafty from the elbow. He can pass it out of the post. He reads his defender well, and this is impressive. He is not shy of contact. He creates it. Watching Brandon Miller versus watching him, granted he's 3 years older, but you can really feel the mentality difference.
Yeah.
He's almost 23, and when you watch him play, that's exactly what it feels like. He's solid in the pick and roll. He's not an incisive passer. He's more of an extra passer, but he always keeps it moving, so the offense can always keep churning. He might get caught out on screens, And he doesn't have the quick twitch ability that you might like from like a high lottery pick sometimes when
Yeah,
it comes into being able to wipe stuff out on defense, or if he's out of position, he can frantically run around the way some rookies like Anthony Black can.
yeah.
But I mean, he's just such a solid player. He's so good. There's a reason he's been rookie of the month in the East for the last 2 months. He's just very solid. You know what you're getting as soon as you put him in. And for someone like the Heat who are just looking for people to soak up minutes, who can be productive, positive players, I mean, he's perfect.
Mm-hmm. No, there's not much more to say, man. I mean, he understands the game. The basketball IQ is on full display every night. The Heat are better for it, and they hit on another one. They just have a knack for these things. They find a guy, later in the draft. It can be late lottery, it can be post lottery, and it just works for them. So kudos to all involved. He's going to have a long, great career in this league. I think that much is certain. One more rookie that was a little bit slept on. I didn't think he would do so well so soon. Brandon Podziemski for the Golden State Warriors. He is fifth in rebounds for a rookie. And I start with that because that's probably the one thing about his game that jumps out to me the most watching him play. I'm sure it does for you too, Avi.
Yes.
But just looking at the way he just chases rebounds, just gets down and dirty, has no fear getting into paint, battling amongst the bigs. He does that at such a high level as a rookie. It really impresses me. And then the part about his game that makes me think of Jaime Jaquez is the basketball IQ, the decision making. He doesn't go outside of himself very often, and that's really good for a rookie to do. When he just understands his role, he knows where to get his shots within the flow of the offense. He doesn't hijack the offense. He's going to take good shots. He's going to be crafty. He's not a super explosive player, much like Jaquez. Neither of them are, oh, hey, I'm just going to just go from point A to point B in 1 second. It's more of methodical with them. But either way, they're effective and they make things happen. He didn't play very much, interestingly enough, until about the 12th game of the season. He had some DMPs. He was inactive. It took a little bit of time for him to get in the rotation. But once he did, it was on November 14th versus the Timberwolves.
Yep.
He put up 23, 7, and 5 that first game with extended run.
Legendary.
And the Warriors did one of these. It's like, we understand now. We get it. So from that point on, he's averaged 27 minutes a game, and he started 8 of those games. And it's been back and forth, which, we could talk about that with the Warriors rotation. It's, not great. But, he started 8 games, and he's made a great impact on this team. So the thing about him, he has a high floor because he doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. He doesn't need to score to be effective. He can be a Josh Hart. Like, hey, I'm not making waves in the box score, but I'm going to have good plus-minus numbers, good advanced stats because I'm a great defender. I'm a great rebounder. I just know where to be on the court. And the defense is specifically is impressive too. They trust him, to guard pretty legit options on the other end for the Warriors. So his defense is rebounding, his basketball IQ. The Warriors needed a guy like this. Moody didn't really pan out the way they thought. Curry's getting older. Chris Paul just broke his hand. Gary Payton, just had another injury. They have a lot going on in the backcourt that's hampering them. So for both the short term and the long term, Podziemski, his role is really significant for the Warriors. So I'm glad this worked out for them. And for Brandon, I mean, it's another key sign that you don't have to be a top tier one and done player to make a mark. You don't have to be the youngest player in the draft to have a great ceiling and a great future. You just have to know how to play the game. You land in the right system, and that system, that organization has to have trust in you. And lucky for both parties, that's been the case so far.
Just listening to all that, I feel like James Harden right now. Just give me the ball and let me cook. I have so much to say about him. First thing I want to say, on my phone right here, I have written notes that I had about Podziemski coming into the draft because I had written a piece towards the end of the draft cycle, right before Summer League, about some of the rookies who I hadn't included on my initial prospect list, but who I really, really liked as sleepers. And there were players who, as I was watching them, I felt like I was learning more about how I thought about basketball just because of how they played. My list: Jaime Jaquez, Keontae George, Trace Jackson Davis, and there was one name who I didn't feel confident enough in, who I left off, and it was Brandon Podziemski. So here are the notes that I wrote watching him from college. He makes pull-ups from beyond the arc. He is an excellent rebounder as a guard, solid team defender, instinctive passer and cutter, and he has a unique and very fun floater, which still translates now. My main concern, his athletic burst to generate separation for drives or rim attempts was questionable, and I felt like there were times where he couldn't generate space for pull-up shots. He might need to get stronger or quicker to become an effective scorer at an effective three-level scorer. And the reason I left him off was my concerns were if I have so many questions about his burst and his on-ball capabilities, and he's a combo guard, will he get minutes? Will he get playing time? If you're a combo guard and you can't really score and I don't want to give you on-ball reps, why will you see minutes? Those are my questions. That's why I left him off. He made a fool out of me real fast. I mean, he has been incredible. The way he stepped in for a Warriors team, which, by the way, does not want to play rookies, he has stolen those minutes. He came in and earned them. It's because he has brought all the plus points. And then even between Summer League and now, he's craftier. He's so much more explosive. He looks like someone who's been studying Steph, if I'm being honest. Mm-hmm. The craft and the skill level that he plays with, there you really feel like you're watching someone who's been surrounded by Chris Paul and Steph. Even from the film I've been watching, he'll bring the ball up the court with tempo. There was against the Pistons, there was one sequence I loved. With tempo, he's bringing the ball up the court. The Pistons are forced to quickly match up because they don't have time to match up correctly. Cade ends up taking Podziemski. He slows down and allows Trey Jackson-Davis time to set the original screen. Based off of how Cade plays it, they flip the screen. Brandon cuts with his right hand. He blows by Cunningham, who's just completely lost. He speeds into the lane. He sees Duran there, stops on a dime, fakes a layup, spins right into a floater, easy peasy. That's the sort of skill level he has already, and he's only 20. A 20-year-old combo guard with playing with the efficiency he does, with the three-point ability that he's shown over a long period of time. You can go back Santa Clara. You can look at him as a prospect over time. He's always had that three-point ability. If he's becoming this crafty, there is a little bit of that Jalen Brunson potential. I just want to put that out there. There is some potential for him to be like a Brunson type of player. Someone who right now is behind like some of these monster legendary league guards. But over time, as his time comes, as he finds a team, or it might just be the Warriors as their core ages out, when he starts getting all those on-ball reps, the craft that he plays with, the intelligence, the fight, I mean, he is a DAWG dog. Okay, that's how he plays on defense and how he rebounds. I think there is some Jalen Brunson potential when I watch him.
I can see it. There's definitely more to unpack with his game. I think there's more we're going to see once he gets more reps, more time. Yeah. Once the other guys, phase out. But how great is it for him to be able to learn from some of the best to ever play the game? Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Steve Kerr, with all his faults this season, all the criticism, he's still one of the great coaches we've ever seen. So when those three guys are in his ear, talking him up, giving him tips and tricks, I mean, his growth is just going to be accelerated. He's going to be that much better, that much faster. So for him, for the Warriors, all great things. It's one of the great stories from this season in the midst of drama. Yes. I mean, this is the most drama the Warriors have dealt with probably in several years, and for the wrong reasons. So at least that's one good reason to talk about the Warriors is this rookie right here and the waves he's making in the NBA. I thank you so much again for taking the time, jumping on. These rooks were awesome. There's so many more we can talk about, but that's a great sign of this class is that there are so many that are making positive contributions in the NBA. So thanks again for coming on and, giving your 2 cents for being a devil's advocate. I think we need that in these pods.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm a believer that the all-rookie team, sometimes if you do it too early, some rookies don't get the full reps that they will later in the year. So I'm perfectly fine with just part twoing this and coming back later. We can talk about some more rookies. We got plenty of time. There's still a whole season ahead.
That's right. And some of these guys are going to get even better that we talked about.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, we can have even more guys that maybe aren't getting minutes. Like once their teams falter, they find themselves in the mix. So this is a great class, and I can't wait to see how it unfolds. But thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to another great episode of NTC. Hope you had fun with it. If you're looking for our content on social media, be sure to check us out. We have all our socials available here, actually. So it's going to be notradeclause.com, no trade clause on Instagram, no trade_clause on Twitter if you're looking for all of our content. But we'll be back real soon with you guys with more content. Hope to see you then. In the meantime, enjoy this NBA season and have a great rest of your day. See you.